The Golden dashed forward and cleared the tall fence. The thud startled everyone when they rushed to see Max whimpering on the ground, but on the other side, a miracle. Before we dive into today's story, let me know where you're tuning in from. Grab a cup of coffee or settle onto your couch. And please don't forget to support us. Just hit that like button, and I'll know you enjoy this kind of tale. Ready? Let's begin. The Saturday afternoon was perfect. The sun shone softly over the family's backyard, casting cozy shadows under the large tree where Max rested, observing his world with those attentive golden eyes only golden retrievers possess. His ears twitched subtly with every sound: 6-year-old Ethan's laughter, the distant hum of cars, the chirping of birds. Ethan played a few yards ahead, completely absorbed in his mission to find the prettiest flowers for a surprise bouquet for his mum, Sarah. His small hands worked carefully, plucking daisies and dandelions that grew near the fence, separating their yard from Mr. Henderson's. "Look, Max, this one's super yellow," Ethan exclaimed, holding up a flower to show his furry companion. Max wagged his tail and approached, delicately sniffing the flower before licking Ethan's cheek. It was like this every day, a perfect partnership between a lively boy and his loyal golden protector. On the other side of the wooden fence, however, something very different was unfolding. Rex, a medium-sized dog known for his aggression, had managed to break free from his chain. Mr. Henderson wasn't home, and the animal roamed nervously through the yard, growling low, his hackles raised. Max was the first to sense it. His ancestral instincts, refined by generations of breeding as a hunting and companion dog, picked up something wrong in the air. The scent changed, the sounds changed. A subtle but unmistakable tension permeated the atmosphere. The Golden slowly rose, his dilated nostrils working to process the information filtering through the fence. His eyes narrowed slightly, and his posture shifted from relaxed to alert. Something was wrong. Very wrong. "Max, what's wrong, boy?" Ethan asked, noticing the dog's change in behavior. But Max didn't respond with his usual display of affection. Instead, he took a few steps toward the fence, muscles tense and head held high. His ears constantly swiveled, catching every suspicious sound. On the other side of the fence, Rex had found a spot where the boards were more spaced out, his eyes fixed on the movement on the other side. Ethan crouched, vulnerable, unprotected. The aggressive animal's predatory instinct was aroused. Max felt the shift in the air even before he saw any movement. The fur on his neck began to bristle, and a low, deep growl rumbled from his throat, something rare for a golden retriever known for its docility. "Max, are you okay?" Ethan approached the dog, still clutching his small bouquet of flowers. That's when it happened. Rex found a gap in the fence and managed to force his head through, snarling loudly and baring his teeth. His eyes were fixed on Ethan, and his intent was clear and dangerous. Ethan, still too innocent to grasp the gravity of the situation, took a few steps back, more confused than scared. "What dog is that, Max?" But Max had already understood everything. In a fraction of a second, his brain processed the threat, calculated the distances, assessed the risks. The aggressive dog was trying to get to their side. Ethan was in mortal danger, and Max was the only thing between his family and a tragedy. Rex managed to push his head and part of his body through the gap in the fence, snarling louder and louder. His paws began to scratch at the ground, trying to find leverage to fully propel himself to the other side. Max looked at Ethan one last time. His golden eyes expressed a fierce determination that few humans had ever seen in an animal. It was the moment of truth. It was time to protect his family, no matter the cost. The golden retriever lowered his body, his muscles coiling like springs about to unleash. Every fiber of his being was focused on a single mission: to prevent that threat from reaching Ethan. Rex was almost fully through the fence when Max made his decision. Max shot forward like a golden arrow. His paws touched the ground just enough to propel his 60-pound body toward the 5-foot-tall wooden fence. Time seemed to slow, every muscle working in perfect sync, every breath calculated to give him maximum strength. Rex had managed to get half his body through the gap and was now pushing with full force, his snarls growing increasingly menacing. His front paws were already touching the ground of the yard where Ethan played, and his wild eyes were fixed on the child. "Max!" Ethan cried out, seeing his dog racing toward him. Still not fully comprehending what was happening, the golden retriever didn't hesitate for a second. With impressive agility for his breed, he leaped. His paws left the ground, and for a moment that seemed eternal, Max flew through the air, determined to intercept Rex before the aggressive dog could reach Ethan. The impact was devastating. Max collided with Rex just as the animal was fully freeing himself from the fence. The thud of the collision between the two dogs echoed throughout the neighborhood like a dry, frightening thunderclap. "Oh my goodness, what was that?" Sarah cried, rushing from the kitchen to the backyard upon hearing the noise. What she saw made her stop mid-stride, her heart pounding. Max was on the ground, panting and whimpering softly, one of his front paws bent at an odd angle. There was blood on his golden fur, and he was clearly in great pain. "Max! Max!" Ethan dropped his flowers and ran toward the dog, tears already welling in his eyes. But Sarah, with acute maternal instinct, pulled her son back. "No, honey, wait." She had noticed something Ethan hadn't yet seen. The fence boards were broken, and through the opening, Rex slowly retreated, dazed by the impact, but still snarling menacingly. Mr. Henderson arrived running, having heard the crash from inside his house. "Oh my God, Rex got out. He's never done that before." The man was visibly panicked, trying to call his dog back. Max tried to get up, but the pain in his left paw was intense. Even so, his eyes remained fixed on Rex, as if he were still ready for a second charge if necessary. His body trembled, a mixture of adrenaline, pain, and pure determination. "No, Max, stay still," Sarah murmured, carefully kneeling near the injured Golden. Her hands trembled as she tried to assess the wounds without touching the hurt animal. Ethan cried copiously, "Is he going to be okay, Mom? Is Max going to be okay?" Rex finally retreated completely to his yard, still agitated but apparently giving up his charge. Mr. Henderson managed to secure him with the makeshift leash he'd brought, murmuring incessant apologies. "I'm so sorry. I don't know what got into him. Rex has never been like this. I'm taking him inside now." But Max didn't relax his vigilance until he was absolutely certain the threat had passed. Only when Rex disappeared completely from view did the Golden allow his body to succumb to pain and exhaustion. "Come on, we need to get him to the vet now," Sarah said, picking up her phone with trembling hands. "And you, my hero," she whispered to Max, "you saved our boy." Max looked at Ethan through his golden eyes, now blurred with pain. Even injured, even suffering, there was a deep satisfaction in his gaze. He had accomplished his mission. His family was safe. Ethan knelt beside the dog, his tears falling onto Max's golden fur. "Thank you, Max. Thank you for protecting me." And in that moment, despite the throbbing pain in his paw, Max managed to wag his tail once, a sign that he would do it all again if necessary. The rush to the animal hospital was desperate. Max lay in the back seat of the car, his head in Ethan's lap, who kept gently stroking the dog's ears and repeating, "It's going to be okay, Max. It's going to be okay." Sarah drove with her hands gripped tight on the steering wheel, constantly checking the rearview mirror to monitor the Golden's condition. Max's paw was visibly swollen, and he panted with difficulty, clearly struggling against the pain. "Dr. Miller, please, are you still there?" Sarah spoke into the phone on speaker, her voice heavy with urgency. It's an emergency. Our golden retriever got hurt saving my son. We're arriving in 5 minutes. I'll be waiting, replied the calm, professional voice of the vet. Bring him straight to the emergency room. Max whimpered softly with each curve in the road. His golden eyes, normally bright and full of life, were dull with pain. Yet he still tried to lick Ethan's hand whenever he could muster the strength. Why did he do it, Mom? Ethan asked, tears streaming down his face. Why did Max get hurt because of me? Sarah swallowed the lump in her throat before answering. Because he loves you more than his own life, honey. That's how golden retrievers are. They protect their family at any cost. When they arrived at the clinic, Dr. Miller and his assistant were already at the door with an improvised stretcher. Max tried to get up upon seeing strangers approach, his protective instinct still active even in his condition. Easy, boy, the vet said in a soft voice, extending his hand so Max could sniff it. I'm here to help. The process of transferring Max to the stretcher was delicate and painful. The dog whimpered loudly when his injured paw was moved, making Ethan sob even louder. Can I stay with him? Ethan asked, following the stretcher into the clinic. Let's see how he's doing first, Dr. Miller replied gently. Then you can keep him company, okay? In the examination room, under the bright lights, the extent of Max's injuries became clearer. Besides the apparently fractured paw, there were some superficial cuts where Rex's teeth had reached, and a large area of fur torn from his shoulder. Is he going to be okay? Sarah's voice trembled. The veterinarian carefully examined each injury, his experienced hands delicately palpating the bones and muscles. Max remained surprisingly calm, as if he understood that these strangers were there to help. The good news, Dr. Miller said after several minutes of silent examination, is that there are no severe internal damages. The paw is fractured, but it's a clean break that will heal well with proper treatment. The relief on Sarah's face was visible. And the other injuries? Superficial. We'll clean everything up, put in a few stitches where needed, and he'll make a full recovery. But the vet paused, looking directly at her. You know you have a hero here, don't you? Max, as if understanding he was being praised, managed to wag his tail weakly against the examination table. From what you've told me, he calculated exactly what he needed to do and executed it perfectly. If it weren't for him... Dr. Miller didn't finish the sentence, but the silence said everything. Can I see him now? Ethan asked from the doorway, where he had waited patiently. Of course, the vet smiled. I think he needs to know it was worth it. When Ethan approached the table, Max gathered all the strength he had to lift his head and lick the boy's face, as if to say he would do it all again. The surgery to repair the fracture lasted 2 hours. For all that time, Ethan remained in the waiting room, drawing get-well cards for Max and asking every 5 minutes if the dog was okay yet. Sarah watched her son with a mixture of pride and concern. The bond between Ethan and the golden retriever was something special she had always known, but what had happened that afternoon had revealed the depth of that love in a way she had never imagined possible. He really saved me, didn't he, Mom? Ethan asked for the 10th time, looking at his drawings. Yes, my love, he saved you. And now I need to save him too, right? The pure simplicity of Ethan's childish logic touched Sarah's heart. Exactly. Now it's our turn to take care of him. When Dr. Miller finally emerged from the operating room, he was smiling. The surgery was a complete success. The bone was perfectly aligned, and I was able to repair all the damaged ligaments. Max will need to wear a splint for a few weeks, but he'll make a full recovery. Ethan jumped from his chair. Can I see him, please? He's still asleep from the anesthesia, but you can stay with him while he wakes up. In fact, the vet knelt down to Ethan's height. I think he'll wake up faster if he hears your voice. In the recovery room, Max lay on a soft bed, his paw wrapped in a white splint. His breathing was slow and deep, and he appeared to be dreaming, his paws moving slightly as if he were still running. Ethan pulled a small chair close to the bed and began talking softly to the sleeping dog. "Hi, Max. It's me. You were so brave today. The doctor said you're going to be okay. I made some drawings for you. This one is of us playing in the backyard when you get better." Slowly, Max's eyes began to open. First, just a slit, then wider until he could focus on the familiar face of Ethan beside him. "Max, you're awake." The joy in Ethan's voice was contagious. The Golden tried to get up immediately, but the pain in his paw and the effects of the anesthesia kept him lying down. Even so, his tail began to thump against the blanket, each movement expressing his happiness at seeing Ethan safe and sound. "Easy, boy," Dr. Miller said, entering the room. "You'll need to rest for a few days. No fence jumping for a while." Max licked Ethan's hand, and in that simple gesture was all the love and satisfaction of a mission accomplished. His eyes, still a little hazy from the medication, shone with the happiness of seeing his family reunited and safe. "Doctor," Sarah asked, "how long until he's fully recovered?" "About 6 weeks for the paw to heal completely, 3 weeks with the splint, then gentle physical therapy. But knowing golden retrievers," he smiled, watching Max try to lick Ethan's face, "I'm sure he'll be an exemplary patient." That night, Max slept in a special bed in Ethan's room, something that wasn't normally allowed, but which became a permanent exception after the day's events. Ethan had insisted he needed to personally care for his hero. "Mom," Ethan whispered in the darkness of the room. "Max knew I was in danger, even before I did, didn't he?" Golden retrievers have a very special instinct to protect those they love. Sarah replied softly, "Max loves you so much, he was willing to get hurt to keep you safe." "I love him too," Ethan murmured, reaching out to gently touch Max's head. "Forever." Max sighed deeply, a sound of pure contentment. Even with the pain of the surgery, even with the uncomfortable splint, he was exactly where he belonged, protecting his family, being loved unconditionally, living the purpose for which he was born. 6 weeks later, a golden Sunday afternoon found Max running freely through the backyard again. His paw had healed perfectly, leaving only a small scar that he carried like a medal of honor. Dr. Miller had been impressed with the speed of his recovery, the determination of a true hero, he had commented. Ethan, now 7 years old, played in the same spot where everything had happened months before. But now there were important changes. A new, taller fence separated the yards, and Rex had been relocated to live with relatives in the countryside, where he had more space and fewer urban stimuli to trigger his aggression. "Max, fetch the ball!" Ethan cried happily, tossing a yellow tennis ball through the air. The golden retriever dashed after the toy with all his usual joy and energy, his 4 paws touching the ground in perfect harmony. There was no sign of limping or hesitation, just the pure happiness of a dog living his best life. When Max brought the ball back, Ethan knelt and hugged the dog's furry neck. "You're the best friend in the whole wide world, you know that." Max licked Ethan's face with enthusiasm, his tail wagging at a speed that made his whole body wiggle. For him, that moment was the perfect reward for everything he had been through. Sarah watched from the kitchen window, her heart full of gratitude. In the months that followed the incident, the bond between her son and Max had deepened in ways she hadn't even known were possible. Ethan had learned about courage, sacrifice, and unconditional love through the living example of his golden retriever. "Mom, look!" Ethan pointed at Max, who had started digging a hole near the tree. "He's making a treasure!" Sarah smiled, remembering how she had feared Max might develop trauma or aggression after the incident. Instead, the golden had become even more affectionate and protective, but in a gentle and balanced way. That afternoon, As the sun began to set, Grandpa George arrived for his weekly visit. He had heard the story of Max's heroism countless times, but never tired of seeing them together. "Hey there, Max! How's my favorite four-legged grandson?" Grandpa George teased, being immediately greeted with enthusiastic licks. "Grandpa, tell that story about when you were a kid and had a golden just like Max," Ethan asked, as he did every week. As Grandpa George began his familiar narrative about the golden retriever from his childhood, Max lay down beside Ethan, his head resting in the boy's lap. His golden eyes quietly observed the backyard, always alert, always ready, but now with the serenity of one who knows his family is safe. "You know what?" Sarah said, joining the group in the shade of the tree. "I always knew golden retrievers were special, but Max taught us they're much more than pets. They're four-legged angels." Ethan looked at Max with a seriousness uncommon for his age. "Max, thank you for saving me that day, and thank you for continuing to save me every day, just by being my friend." Max raised his head and looked into Ethan's eyes, and in that moment there was a silent communication between them, a mutual and profound understanding that transcended words. The golden retriever knew he had fulfilled his greatest purpose in life: to protect, to love, and to be loved unconditionally. As the family continued chatting under the tree, Max closed his eyes contentedly. His paw no longer hurt, his family was safe and happy, and he knew that if necessary, he would do it all again. Because that is the nature of a golden retriever: to love without limits, to protect without hesitation, and to find the greatest happiness in the simple certainty that those we love are well. The golden afternoon transformed into a starry night, and Max fell asleep beside his boy, dreaming of tennis balls, warm hugs, and the eternal satisfaction of being exactly who he was born to be: a golden hero with a giant heart.